Welcome to Across the Pitch. Let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to talk about what in the world is happening at Manchester City. Because I've been watching football for a long time, and I've never, and I mean never, seen a Pep Guardiola team crumble like this. Let's break down this absolutely mental PSG comeback. Because what we witnessed at the Parc des Princes wasn't just a game of football, it was a complete reimagining of everything we thought we knew about Pep City. First things first, let's set the scene. City, up 2-0 after 50 minutes, looking comfortable. Haaland's got his tap in, and you're thinking, okay, this is just another day at the office for the champions, right? But football has other ideas. What happens next is genuinely unprecedented in the Guardiola era. PSG doesn't just come back, they absolutely dominate City at their own game. And when I say dominate, I mean dominate. Let me throw some numbers at you that'll blow your mind. PSG ends up with 64% possession. This is against a Pep Guardiola team, the same Pep who built his entire career on controlling the ball. PSG completes 615 passes to City's 356. Luis Enrique essentially out-pepped Pep, and I still can't quite believe what I saw. And here's the thing. It's not like City fielded their B team. We're talking about a lineup with Kevin De Bruyne back in action, Foden pulling strings, Haaland up front, Ruben Dias marshalling the defense, Ederson between the sticks. This is pretty much their strongest 11. But something's just fundamentally broken in this City machine right now. The turnaround started with João Neves, with a header that changes the whole complexion of the game, making it 3-2. Then Gonzalo Ramos puts the final nail in the coffin for 4-2. You couldn't script this stuff. But let's talk about what this means for the bigger picture, because this Champions League season has become absolutely wild. We're heading into the final match day, and get this, Manchester City could potentially not even make the top 24. Let that sink in for a minute. The team that was basically untouchable last season might have to struggle to go through the playoffs. And they're not alone. This new Champions League format is giving us something we've never seen before. Think about it. We could potentially have Real Madrid in the playoffs, Bayern Munich in the playoffs, PSG in the playoffs if things don't go their way, and City might join them. Even Juventus and AC Milan could end up there. When was the last time we saw this many giants potentially having to fight their way through playoff rounds? The brilliance of this new format is that it's created this incredible tension where literally every game matters. There's no such thing as an easy group stage anymore. Every point is crucial. Every goal could be the difference between automatic qualification and having to go through the playoffs. What's particularly fascinating about this City collapse is how it's exposed vulnerabilities we didn't even know existed in Pep's system. For years, they've been the masters of control, the team that suffocates opposition with possession. But against PSG, they looked lost, almost amateur in how they surrendered control of the game. After Haaland's goal, it was like watching a completely different team. Luis Enrique deserves massive credit here. The way he set up PSG to not just compete with City, but to beat them at their own game, that's tactical masterclass territory. Two former Barcelona managers going head-to-head, and it's Lucho who comes out on top, completely dismantling Pep's philosophy. The implications of this result are huge. City's final game has become absolutely crucial, and there's no guarantee they'll even make it to the playoffs. This is the same team that was basically untouchable last season, now fighting for their Champions League survival. But this is exactly why football is the beautiful game, isn't it? Just when you think you've got it all figured out, just when you think you know what's going to happen, the sport throws you a complete curveball. This new Champions League format has brought back the element of unpredictability that we'd been missing for years. Looking ahead, the final match day is going to be absolute chaos. You've got multiple scenarios where giants could miss out entirely, where traditional powerhouses might have to slug it out in the playoffs, and where teams that nobody expected to be in contention could sneak into those automatic qualification spots. For City, this has to be a massive wake-up call. They've got issues that need sorting, and fast. The defense looks vulnerable. The midfield isn't controlling games like it used to. And even with all their firepower up front, they're not killing games off like they should. UEFA promised us entertainment with this new format, and boy, have they delivered. We're seeing big games every match day, dramatic turnarounds, and the kind of tension that makes football the world's favorite sport. No one's safe, no result is guaranteed, and that's exactly how it should be. Moving on, let's dive into this absolutely fascinating Real Madrid performance. Because what we witnessed in this 5-1 win over Salzburg wasn't just about the scoreline, it was about a team finding their identity at exactly the right moment in this Champions League campaign. The opening 20 minutes were genuinely concerning. Madrid, a team fighting for their Champions League life, looked completely disinterested. The ball circulation was slow, the pressing was non existent, and Salzburg actually looked more likely to make something happen. In these moments, you could feel the tension in the Bernabeu. The fans knew how much was at stake. But then came the moment that changed everything. It started with what looked like a fairly routine interception from Valverde, but what followed was anything but routine. The speed of the transition, Vinicius's movement, Bellingham's run, suddenly Madrid looked like Madrid again. And there was Rodrigo, finishing it off with the kind of composure that's become his trademark this season. What's particularly interesting about this Madrid team is how they've adapted to compensate for their defensive vulnerabilities. Ancelotti's solution has been fascinating. Instead of trying to shore up the defense, he's essentially said, fine, we might concede, but we'll just score more than you. It's a high-risk strategy, but with the firepower at his disposal, it's starting to make sense. The midfield balance is crucial to making this work. Playing Tchouaméni as a single pivot is a brave choice, but it's allowing Bellingham to play in that free role he thrives in. What's remarkable is how much defensive responsibility Bellingham's taking on, despite being given that attacking freedom. There was a moment in the first half where he tracked back 60 yards to make a crucial interception. That's the kind of commitment that's infectious. But let's talk about the real story of the night. Rodrigo's evolution into a complete forward. His second goal was a masterclass in modern wing play. The way he drifted inside from the left, the timing of his run, the finish, it's the kind of goal that makes you realize this isn't just a good player hitting form. This is a great player reaching new levels. The fullback situation at Madrid deserves its own analysis. Valverde at right back is one of those moves that looks odd on paper, but makes perfect sense in practice. His ability to invert into midfield when Madrid have possession gives them an extra man in the build-up, while his recovery pace means they're rarely caught out on the counter. It's creating a fascinating tactical asymmetry, with the left back staying wider while Valverde tucks in. Madrid's pressing structure has evolved too. Early in the season, they were often disjointed, pressing in ones and twos. Now, there's a clear pattern. They're waiting for specific triggers before engaging. And when they do, it's coordinated. You saw it perfectly for the third goal. Mbappe's pressure forced the keeper into that error, not because it was particularly aggressive, but because it was perfectly timed. The substitutions showed how far this squad has come. Being able to rest Bellingham, bring on fresh legs, and maintain the same level of control, that's the mark of a well-constructed squad. The fact that the fifth goal came after several changes had been made speaks volumes about the tactical understanding throughout the team. Looking at the bigger picture, Madrid's position in this new Champions League format is fascinating. They're likely heading to the playoffs unless something miraculous happens on the final match day, but they might actually be better suited to knockout football right now. Their ability to raise their game for big occasions, combined with this newfound scoring touch, makes them a dangerous proposition over two legs. The transformation of their attack has been remarkable. Early in the season, it felt like the forward line was playing as individuals. Talented individuals, certainly, but not a cohesive unit. Now you're seeing real combinations developing. The understanding between Bellingham and Rodrigo in particular has evolved into something special. They seem to instinctively know where the other will be. Ancelotti deserves enormous credit for this evolution. He's managed to implement significant tactical changes without compromising the team's core identity. The switch to a more fluid attacking structure could have easily disrupted the team's balance, but instead it's enhanced their unpredictability. Opponents can't just focus on shutting down one area anymore. The threat comes from everywhere. This performance also showed why Madrid remains such a force in European football. Even when they're not dominating possession, even when they're not playing their best football, they have this ability to produce moments of pure quality that change games. It's not just about individual brilliance, though there's plenty of that. It's about a collective understanding of how to manage big European nights. The challenge now will be maintaining this momentum. The playoffs look likely, and that means every game becomes a cup final. But if there's one team you'd back to handle that pressure, it's this Madrid side. They've shown they can score goals in bunches, they've got match winners all over the pitch, and most importantly, they seem to be finding their best form at exactly the right time. Football at this level is all about timing, and Madrid look like they're building towards something special. Whether they can navigate the playoffs and make a serious run at the trophy remains to be seen. But one thing's for certain, nobody will want to face this team in their current mood. When Madrid start clicking like this, when they start finding their rhythm, they become a different proposition entirely. Now, let's talk about Arsenal's 3-0 win over Dinamo Zagreb, because while the scoreline looks comfortable, there's a lot more to unpack here about where this Arsenal team really stands in this new Champions League format. First things first, Arsenal are now sitting pretty in third place out of 36 teams, which is no small achievement considering the doom and gloom that surrounded them after that defeat to Bayern. But let's be real here. This performance against Dinamo raises some interesting questions about Arsenal's ceiling in this competition. The scoreline says 3-0, and on paper that looks dominant. But watching the game, you got the feeling Arsenal were playing in second gear throughout. Now, some might say that's a criticism, but I actually see it differently. This is a team that's learned how to manage games, how to get results without emptying the tank. Against a Dinamo side that came to London with zero ambition, setting up in that low block and hoping to catch Arsenal on the counter, the Gunners showed maturity in their approach. Let's talk about the players who've been under the microscope lately, because this is where it gets interesting. Martinelli, who's been getting stick recently, absolutely cooked their defenders today. Even when they doubled up on him, he was still finding ways to create danger. His movement was sharper, his decision-making clearer, and most importantly, his confidence looks to be returning. Speaking of stepping up, Odegaard getting on the scoresheet is massive for Arsenal. The captain's been under pressure lately, but that's mainly because we all know what he's capable of. When Odegaard's on form, he transforms this Arsenal team. His goal today wasn't just about the 3 points, it was about building momentum, about showing he's ready to lead this team through the business end of the season. However, let's address the elephant in the room, the striker situation. Arsenal have qualified. They're sitting third overall, but the lack of a clinical number 9 is still the biggest question mark hanging over their Champions League ambitions. Jesus is out for the season, and while Havertz has shown improvement, you have to wonder if Arsenal can really compete with the likes of Barcelona and Liverpool without strengthening up front. The January window is going to be fascinating. We're hearing lots of names, Tony being the obvious one, but January deals are notoriously difficult to get over the line. Teams don't want to sell their best players mid-season, and when they do, they demand premium prices. But Arsenal are in a unique position. They've got a genuine shot at both the league and Champions League, but they need reinforcements to make it happen. What's particularly interesting about Arsenal's Champions League campaign so far is how they've adapted to different challenges. Against teams that come to play, they've shown they can go toe-to-toe with anyone. Against teams that sit deep like Dinamo tonight, they're showing more patience, more tactical flexibility. But the real tests are still to come. The clean sheet tonight shouldn't be overlooked either. Gabriel was absolutely dominant. That one moment where they tried to catch Arsenal with a long ball, he just gobbled it up like it was nothing. This defensive solidity is going to be crucial in the knockout stages, especially if Arsenal end up facing one of the bigger teams. Can Arsenal win it? With their current squad, it's a tall order. But football's a funny old game, and if they can strengthen in January, who knows? The format might be confusing for some, but it's creating opportunities for teams to build momentum, to find their rhythm. Arsenal have done the hard part. They've qualified. Now it's about kicking on. Sterling's form remains a concern. Another quiet game from him tonight. But that's the beauty of this Arsenal squad. They've got options. Players like Martinelli stepping up, Havertz finding his feet, Odegaard getting back among the goals. These are all positive signs heading into what's going to be a crucial period. The next few weeks are going to tell us a lot about Arsenal's ambitions. The transfer window will be crucial, not just in terms of who they bring in, but how quickly they can get deals done. In this new Champions League format, with games coming thick and fast, squad depth isn't just important, it's essential. Football is about getting the job done. Arsenal did that tonight. 3-0, clean sheet, key players finding form, and one step closer to the knockout stages. Not a bad night's work at all. Let's look at the other matches. Let's start with the absolute shocker. Feyenoord 3, Bayern Munich 0. Let that sink in for a minute. Bayern Munich, one of the most dominant forces in European football, just got absolutely schooled in Rotterdam. Nobody, and I mean nobody, saw this coming. This is a Bayern team that's been struggling, sure, but to lose 3-0, that's the kind of result that gets people fired in Munich. This puts Bayern in a really precarious position in terms of automatic qualification. They're now hoping for a miracle on the final match day, needing multiple results to go their way just to make the top 8. Who would have thought we'd be saying that about Bayern at this stage of the competition? RB Leipzig continues to impress, picking up a solid 2-0 win against Sporting. The win meant nothing. They are still out, which is a shame. Sporting is still in. Shakhtar, despite everything going on in their country, managed a professional 2-0 win against Brest. The resilience of this team continues to amaze. Playing their home games in a different country, dealing with all sorts of logistical challenges, yet still competing at this level. That's proper football spirit right there. Inter picked up a crucial 1-0 win at Sparta Praha, the kind of result that might not make headlines, but could be absolutely vital come the final standings. Classic Italian job. Get in, get the 3 points, get out. Sometimes that's all you need in European football. Celtic grabbed an important 1-0 win against Young Boys, keeping their playoff hopes alive. The Scottish champions haven't had the easiest time in this new format, but they're showing they can compete when it matters. Milan managed to edge past Girona 1-0 in what was a pretty cagey affair. The Rossoneri haven't been at their sparkling best, but they're grinding out results when they need them. That's what experienced European campaigners do. They are in the top 8. Now let's break down these Champions League standings, because the drama heading into the final match day is absolutely incredible. With just one round of matches left, we've got some of football's biggest names sweating over their fate. Let's start at the top, where Liverpool and Barcelona are sitting pretty. They're the only two teams who can actually relax next week, having already guaranteed their spots in the top 8. Must be nice, eh? For everyone else in those top spots, Arsenal through to Atalanta, it's simple. Win your last game, and you're in the round of 16. No playoffs, no extra games, straight through to the business end. But here's where it gets really interesting. Look at the middle of the table, where some of Europe's heavyweights are fighting for their lives. PSG managed to jump into the playoff spots after that incredible comeback against City, and they only need a point in their final game to make sure they're at least in the playoffs. Talk about a turnaround, from looking like they might miss out completely to potentially securing their spot with a game to spare. Now, let's talk about the real drama at the bottom end of the playoff race. Manchester City are in serious trouble. They're sitting in that elimination zone, and while they can still qualify for the playoffs, they absolutely must win their final game. A draw or loss, and they're out. Just let that sink in for a moment. We could have a Champions League knockout stage without Pep Guardiola's City. That's how wild this new format is. Celtic fans can breathe a little easier after that win against Young Boys. That own goal might not have been pretty, but it's done the job. They're now guaranteed at least a playoff spot. Everyone sitting 18th or above with 12 points or more knows they'll at least get a shot at the round of 16 through the playoffs. That's got to feel good, especially for teams who might have been worried about dropping out completely. But spare a thought for the teams from Bologna downwards, 28th place and below. Their Champions League dreams are officially over. No amount of final day heroics can save them now. That's the brutal reality of this new format. It might give more teams a shot at glory, but it also means some big names are going to face early exits. What makes this final match day so fascinating is how many different scenarios are still in play. Teams like Shakhtar, who've been dealing with unimaginable circumstances playing their home games away from Ukraine, still have a shot at the playoffs. Dinamo Zagreb, despite that loss to Arsenal, aren't out of it yet either. This is exactly what UEFA wanted when they designed this format, meaningful games right until the end. The really intriguing part is how this might affect team strategies on the final day. Do you go all out for the win to try and secure automatic qualification? Or do you play it safe and make sure you at least stay in the playoff spots? These are the kinds of decisions that can define a season. Looking ahead to that final match day, we're set for what might be the most dramatic 90 minutes of football this season. Every point could be the difference between automatic qualification, playoffs, or elimination. There's no room for complacency, no margin for error. This is what Champions League football is all about. When everything's on the line, when reputations count for nothing, and when history gets written in real time. For all the confusion and criticism this new format has faced, you can't deny it's delivering drama by the bucket load. We've got traditional powerhouses fighting for survival, underdogs dreaming of glory, and absolutely everything to play for. Football doesn't get much better than this. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Who do you think makes the automatic qualification spots, and which big team gets knocked out? Are City in real trouble, or will they pull through on the final day? As always, like and subscribe if you want to keep up with all the Champions League madness. Across the pitch, over and out.